Hello, in this video I'm going to be reviewing Fractal's brand new Torrent Compact, which launches today alongside the Torrent Nano. So is this shrunken down version of the Fractal Torrent worth considering for your next case? Stick around to find out. It's good to see the Torrent Compact features a very similar design to the original Fractal Torrent, with the open front grille and Y-shaped vent and two 180mm fans pre-installed at the front. The Torrent Compact is available in RGB and non-RGB versions. The RGB version is currently only available in black with a tempered glass panel with a light tint, while the non-RGB versions are available in black with a solid side panel, black with a tempered glass panel with a dark tint, and white with a clear tempered glass side panel. In terms of MSRP, you're looking at $149.99 US for the non-RGB version, while the RGB version will set you back an extra $20 at $169.99. Removing the Torrent Compact's tempered glass side panels is straightforward. They just need to be pulled out at the top and then can be lifted away. It's nice to have the option of securing the top panels with a screw at the top if you're going to be moving the case, or if you overdo it with the cables at the back, it's going to help you get the panel back on. To remove the front panel, you simply need to pull it out from the top and then it can be lifted away. Behind the front panel, we've got a full-length nylon dust filter. The case's second dust filter is down at the bottom and it can simply be pulled out at the front once the front panel has been removed. With the front panel removed, you can see the two 180mm Prisma AL18 PWM fans, which are pre-installed at the front of the RGB version that I have here. If you get one of the non-RGB versions, you're going to have two X2 GP18 fans pre-installed. Taking a look at the front I/O, we've got a power and reset button, we've got two USB Type-A ports, a single Type-C port, and a separate headphone and microphone jack. The top panel is removed by putting it backwards and then lifting away. Like with the original Fractal Torrent, the power supply is going to go in the top, and the Torrent Compact will accommodate full-sized ATX power supplies up to 210mm in length. It's good to see we've got a large cutout at the top, which is designed to help you plug in your EPS cables before installing the power supply. At the top of the case, we've got a single hard drive tray where you can install either a single 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drive in the tray itself, with additional 2.5-inch drive installed beneath the tray. The hard drive tray can be installed in two different positions. In its default position, you've got 174mm from the back of the case to the hard drive tray. It can be moved forward, increasing this distance to 224mm. If you're wanting to go with a custom loop, you'll be pleased to see there's a cutout for a fill port at the top. On the power supply side, we've got an ARGB lighting bar which can be synced with your motherboard. This is present in all versions of the Torrent, including the non-RGB versions, apart from the one with the solid side panel. Moving into the main body of the case, the Torrent Compact will accommodate motherboards up to eATX. The case comes with two 180mm fans pre-installed at the front. However, using the brackets in the case accessory box, there is the option to remove these and replace them with three 120 or two 140mm fans. At the bottom of the case with a full-sized ATX motherboard, you can fit either two 120 or two 140mm fans. If you go with a micro ATX motherboard, it is possible to fit two 180mm fans at the bottom, although to do this you're going to have to remove the bottom 180mm fan at the front. So it's not possible to have four 180mm fans in this case at any one time. You can have two at the bottom, but only one at the front. At the rear of the case, you can fit a 120mm fan. In terms of radiator support, you can fit up to a 360 or 280mm radiator at the front. It's up to a 280mm radiator at the bottom and a 120mm radiator on the rear. In terms of GPU support, the case comes with 7 horizontal PCIe slots and will accommodate graphics cards up to a maximum length of 330mm with the two 180mm fans pre-installed at the front. If you remove these fans, you can fit graphics cards up to 368mm. If you want to mount your graphics card vertically, you'll be pleased to hear the case is compatible with Fractal's Flex B20 vertical riser bracket. It's also good to see the case comes with a GPU support bracket, which does a great job of supporting the GPU. Moving into the rear compartment, it's good to see we've got cutouts in all the right places and nice to see these have got rubber grommets on them. We've got cable raceways over to the left hand side. There's plenty of Velcro cable straps, although cable routing space does look to be quite limited at only 20mm. At the bottom right hand side, we've got three mounting brackets for 2.5-inch SSDs. bringing the total amount of SSDs that can be mounted in this case to 5. At the bottom left hand side we've got a Nexus 9P Slim PWM fan hub which can accommodate up to 9 fans. As well as this, we've got an additional Velcro cable strap up in the power supply compartment to help manage the cables there. And because the power supply is going to be mounted at the top of the case, the cable running down to the wall is going to look quite untidy. Fractal have thought about this and included some Velcro cable straps at the back to help manage your power supply cable. What I want to do now is give you a look at the build I've put together in the Torrent Compact. So the build looks great, but what about the temperatures? Before I start, it is important to say that all fans were running on the stock motherboard fan curves, and the only overclocking that was done was enabling the XMP profile on the RAM. So these were pretty good. Our i7-12700K idled at 30 degrees, and our ASRock Pro 4 did a great job of keeping it cool. During a 10-minute AIDA64 stability test, it reached a maximum temperature of 92 degrees without any thermal throttling. The STRIX RTX 3080 idled at 33 degrees, reaching a maximum of 68 degrees during the AIDA64 stability test. Noise levels were also pretty good at only 36 decibels at idle, reaching a maximum of 43 decibels during the AIDA64 stability test. So when I put my build together, I was keen to maximise all the case fan locations in the Torrent Compact. So what I want to do now is look and see was that necessary. First of all, starting off with our rear exhaust fan. So I went ahead and removed this and reran the thermal testing. Taking a look at the temperatures, and all the temperatures went up by 1 degree, both at idle and under load, with the rear exhaust fan removed. In terms of noise levels, removing the rear exhaust fan reduced the idle noise by 3 decibels, while under load this increased by 1 decibel. So the results are fairly clear. The rear exhaust fan does improve both the CPU and GPU temperatures, but only by a small amount. For me, I think it looks much better with the rear exhaust fan, but you're going to have to factor in whether that cost of an extra fan is worth those benefits. The next thing I wanted to do was take a look at the bottom intake fans below the GPU and whether they're worth installing. So the bottom intake fans removed, our CPU was 1 degree cooler both at idle and under load. In terms of GPU temperature, there was no difference to the idle temperatures. However, our GPU ran significantly hotter with the bottom fans removed by 4 degrees. In terms of noise levels, with the 2 fans removed at the bottom, our PC was 1 decibel quieter at idle, but 5 decibels louder under full load. So explaining those results, it makes sense if we've got intake fans below our GPU, bringing more cooler to them, it's going to run significantly cooler. The fact that our CPU temperatures came down without the bottom intake fans is probably explained by, with the fans at the bottom, they're blowing hot air up towards the CPU cooler. Without them, all the cool air is coming in from the front. So the CPU is seeing more cool air without the bottom intake fans. In terms of noise levels, the PC was significantly louder under load without the bottom intake fans. And I think that's just the GPU temperatures being slightly higher under load. When the GPU seems to get above 70, the fans ramp up significantly, and I think that's why we got more noise with less fans in the case. So I think putting that all together, you were getting significantly better GPU temperatures with the 2 bottom intake fans. Again, I think it looks better. So for me, I would recommend having 2 fans installed beneath the GPU. The last thing I wanted to do was look and see, could you run the PC without adding any additional fans and just have the 2 180mm fans at the front and pop an air cooler in the middle. So I compared this to my configuration where I had maximised all the fan mounting locations. Taking a look at the temperatures, there was absolutely no difference to the CPU temperatures at idle, and our CPU only ran 1 degree cooler with all the fan mounting locations occupied under load. Having just the front fans, our GPU did run hotter by 1 degree at idle and 4 degrees under load. In terms of noise levels, it depended on what you were doing with the PC. Having just the front two intake fans, our PC was significantly quieter at idle by 6 decibels. However, it was the opposite story under full load, and this was actually the noisiest configuration by 5 decibels. And I think that can be again explained by the graphics card hitting over 70 degrees, at which stage the fans ramp up quite loudly. So this is definitely something you could consider doing if you wanted. You could run with just the two 180mm fans that are pre-installed at the front, pop an air cooler in the middle, and you would have some very acceptable CPU and GPU temperatures, but an incredibly quiet PC. The only bit where it would slightly not be as good for me would be the aesthetics. I think having the fans at the bottom and at the rear significantly add to the look of the build. But if money was tight and you wanted to get this case, it's definitely an option you could consider. What I want to do now is move on to my build experience in the Torrent Compact. And this was generally fairly good. And I think this was largely due to the fact that I had anticipated a lot of the problems that had the potential to occur. Down at the bottom of the case, make sure you plug in all the cables before you install the fans at the bottom, because they're going to be quite difficult after you've installed the fans. Something else to consider, Fractal do recommend removing the bottom feet if you want to install fans down at the bottom. I was able to install these two 140mm fans down at the bottom all the way to the left hand side without removing the bottom feet. Although if I wanted them in slightly different locations or had wanted 120mm fans, it might not have been so easy. So what I would recommend doing is putting your fans down at the bottom where you want them and check and see whether you can screw them in or not before going to the effort of removing the feet. The final thing that I want to talk about with the build experience was the cable management space at the back. In the Torrent Compact, this is only 20mm. In the Torrent Nano, which is a smaller case that I've also done a full step-by-step build guide in, and you'll find a link to that in the description, the cable routing space is 29mm, so actually 9mm bigger in a smaller case, so this was always going to be difficult. I also put this to the test by using cable extensions for both the 24-pin connector, and we've got 3 PCIe cables as well. And I didn't think this was going to be a good idea, but I did want to test it out to see whether it would work. Now in the build, I really struggled to get the rear side panel back on. I made use of the screw at the top to get it on, but the side panel was not sitting flush with the case, and I would worry about leaving it like that long term. So I wouldn't recommend using cable extensions in this case. I do think the cable routing space at the back is quite limited. So this brings me on to the things I liked about the Torrent Compact, and a lot of what I'm going to say can actually be shared with the other two Torrent cases. The first is the looks. I think this case is absolutely stunning, and a large part of that is due to the front grille and the two 180mm fans at the front. The other thing, as you would expect, coming from Fractal, the build quality is exceptional. As well, the case has a lot of really good features, the included fan hub, the cable raceways, and lots of Velcro cable straps, not only at the rear of the case, but in the top to manage the power supply cables, and at the back to manage your power cable going down to the wall, is all really well thought out. Moving on to the things I didn't like about the Torrent Compact, and in fact there is just one, and that was the cable management. I had an absolutely brilliant build experience until I tried to put the rear side panel on, although I did anticipate this was going to be difficult with only 20mm of cable routing space at the back, and the fact that I had tried to use cable extensions. It's a little bit disappointing because otherwise this case was perfect, and if that cable routing space had just been the same as the Torrent Nano, I think this case would have been absolutely perfect. Alternatively, if you don't have any interest in using cable extensions, I don't think you'll have any trouble routing the cables at the back. And it is nice to see that Fractal have that little screw that is going to allow you to secure that panel if there is a little bit of pressure on it. Although with the cable extensions, there was too much pressure on that panel for me to leave it like that. The only other thing is, should you get this case or the full-sized Fractal Torrent, and I think in here you can fit pretty much most of what you're going to want for an average build, and the advantage of this is you're going to have a smaller footprint on your desk. So you can fit a large premium air cooler, you can fit a large graphics card like this STRIX 3080, and you can fit a lot of fans. So what is the original Fractal Torrent going to give you that this case doesn't? Well, I think it just means you can fit a little bit more into it and you don't have to worry so much about your components. So for example, in the original Torrent, you can have two 180mm fans at the front and two 180s at the bottom, and you can go up to a 140mm fan at the rear. Again, cable management is going to be that little bit easier at the back because you're going to have a bigger cable routing space. I do use cable extensions in my full-size Torrent on my desk behind me, and they don't give me the same issues. I do have to use the screw to secure that panel, but it's not under pressure and it's sitting flush at the back. If you wanted to mount more drives, again, you're going to have more space in the original Torrent for more 3.5-inch drives, but with 5 2.5-inch drives in this case, you're doing pretty good. In terms of mounting an AIO, I don't think this is a good idea. I think you should be going with an air cooler. You get exceptional temperatures and a lovely quiet PC with it. But if you did want to go with an AIO, I wasn't able to fit it in front of this graphics card in the Torrent Compact, but I was in the original Fractal Torrent. So there will be some small compromises with going for a slightly smaller footprint of a case, but the big advantage of this is it's going to take up less space on your desk. So putting all that together, I can most definitely recommend the Torrent Compact. In fact, I can recommend all three of the Fractal Torrent cases, depending on the space you have on your desk and the components you want to fit into it. There should be a case that meets your needs, and I think you're going to have a great looking, cool and quiet build. So remember, I have done a full step-by-step build guide in all three of the Torrent cases. You'll find links to those in the description. So if you are thinking of doing a build in the case, it's probably worth checking that out. So hopefully you have found the video useful. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.